Hello everyone, welcome to Anime and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. Usopp is an incredible sniper, being very skilled with his long distance tools and able to give an amazing level of support to his crew. However, as we've seen, he doesn't really have a good control over any haki right now, only being able to use some observational haki that we've seen help him make some amazingly great shots. But so far he's only demonstrated to possess a type of haki that makes him have an improved vision of the environment around him. Now, this already makes you something in way of really useful because you can see the dangers that lurk around corners and get a much better idea of where to hit your targets for their weaknesses. But this observation haki is not enough to make him really the greatest sniper in the world because he doesn't have armament haki to cover his body or his projectiles with this technique, or even Conqueror's haki where he would be able to knock out his enemies or maybe even use Conqueror's coating on his projectiles. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the ways in which Usopp could become even stronger so that he could take on the most powerful enemies that are yet to come. But before we take aim in this video, if you're new to the channel, we'd be absolutely honored if you considered leaving us a like or even subscribing and maybe leave a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out and motivates us to make more content, and if you'd like to help us out in a bigger way, consider sharing the channel or the video with a friend. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So friends, Usopp is the marksman or the sniper of the Straw Hat crew, so he doesn't fight directly kinda in the front lines of combat. Usopp helps his allies at long range by distracting their opponents or even defeating them from a distance. During the time skip where the Straw Hats were separated so that each one could get stronger, Usopp was able to learn and use observation haki, giving him the ability to hit his enemies with absolute deadly precision. But other than that, because he doesn't have the ability to use armament haki or even Conqueror's haki, it kind of makes him one of the weaker Straw Hats because he wouldn't be able to face, or at least go toe-to-toe with powerful opponents that have a greater command of haki. On top of that, Usopp doesn't have an ability that would allow him to even hit Devil Fruit users who have powers that favor the user's body, like Luffy's Sun Fruit, which allows him to have a rubbery body. So this would make his hits without haki not cause really any damage at all. And because Usopp wouldn't be able to cause a lot of damage to these characters, and let's not even think about Logia users who can become intangible, it makes it really almost impossible for Usopp to win in a fight against a person like this. But if Usopp were to add haki, or even Conqueror's haki, to his weapon, it would become an extremely useful thing, and he could really become one of the most powerful pirates, because as we saw, Conqueror's haki has the ability to make any strike, or whatever the user is using, become so much more infinitely stronger. Think about it. Usopp could use the projectiles from his slingshot and hit his opponents even if they were behind structures, because the projectiles coated with haki would be able to go right through them to reach their target without losing speed or force of the impact that they have. So if Usopp could learn armament haki, or possibly even awaken his Conqueror's haki in some way or some other way that we don't know of yet, Usopp could become so much more powerful. And not only that, this wouldn't just make him a sniper who supports the crew. He would be able to sit there on the front lines or even closer to the fray, just like Luffy and Sanji and Zoro are able to do. If Usopp were to somehow be able to become, say, a giant or some kind of larger creature through a Devil Fruit, this would give him the ability to use even larger combat tools and weapons that could cause even more damage in an area. And if he were able to somehow become a giant, this would allow Usopp to hit many more enemies at once because of the much clearer view of the battle that it would give him. And this would allow him to become one of the strongest Straw Hats out there. Since we met him at the beginning of One Piece, Usopp has always been a very talented marksman. His accuracy in hitting his target was always much higher compared to other characters, and he showed it that he had kind of inherited this from his father, an exceptional marksman who happens to belong to Shanks' crew. In a challenge to hit a whale-shaped windmill that was far away from his location, Usopp managed to shoot the whale in the eye, which impressed everyone around him, not only with his incredible accuracy, but for being that accurate from that far away. Aside from his great marksmanship, Usopp is also probably one of the smartest Straw Hat members on the crew, and he has been able to create bunches of new tools for combat just like Franky. Let's think about it. I mean, Usopp has created hammers, he's created special projectiles to use during combat, he invented, Nami's climb attack for crying out loud. So this gives him an even wider array of tools and weapons to attack his opponents. To illustrate how his marksmanship is nearly unmatched, remember that Usopp was able to hit Spandam and some Marines from a distance of over a mile with the wind against him, but seemingly this still can't compare to what his father Usopp has done. So Usopp has still got a lot more to learn to reach the same level and power as his father. It's also interesting to note that during combat, Usopp really prefers to use much larger weapons, like his big kabuto or even a giant hammer that he made himself, which seems to give him not only better aim, but gives him a much bigger array of ammunition and larger ammunition to fire. And currently, being a marksman, Usopp usually likes to stay at a very safe distance from his opponent in order to hit them with a projectile. But when the enemy gets close, Usopp starts to get scared and doesn't know what to do in these situations. So often he just runs away from the fight, abandoning his companions sometimes. And not only that, let's also remember that before the introduction of Franky, Usopp kind of served as the impromptu shipwright and really had to be the expert in building and fixing. And like I already said, he was the one who had invented Kabuto and Nami's climb attack, and also has upgraded it several times since. Usopp also seems to have a knowledge of chemistry or some kind of science or whatever they have in the One Piece universe, where he's been able to make very innovative slingshot balls, including steels or stars or all different kinds of ways of just being really set for the situation. But thankfully, Franky was added to the crew because although he does respect what Usopp does, he's still kind of, Franky's the man and he's the shipwright, and says that really, Usopp should only be doing kind of, amateurish level carpentry projects. But even though with his inexperience, he still was able to hold the going merry together for quite a while. But we see that maybe it's not in the shipwright area, but rather in the weapons making that Usopp really shines. As Usopp's main weapon is a slingshot, it seems to be kind of a unique choice in the world because, as we've seen, most other pirates who fight at a distance tend to use a rifle or some kind of firearm because they're able to shoot faster and are much easier kind of to find in terms of finding rifles or muskets or whatever's around. Even Usopp's father Usopp seems to use pistols for battling, which makes Usopp the most different among them. But he's still an excellent marksman using a slingshot, which may seem to have at first a big disadvantage compared to a ranged tool like a rifle. But in very Usopp fashion, he's been able to get around this disadvantage through his unique projectiles that give him a wide variety of techniques that can be used in combat to catch his enemies off guard. Just to talk about a few of the really kind of interesting projectiles that Usopp has created throughout the adventure, we've seen things like eggs that he uses to blind his opponents, or just regular rocks when he's out of ammo. We've seen him stun opponents for a short amount of time, or even use things based on his pop greens where they can go around and wrap his opponents up. But Usopp also has secret weapons, because even though he has these amazing ranged attacks with these projectiles, he also has an amazing ability to make attacks based on lies or jokes to make his enemies afraid. We have seen Usopp expertly lie to his enemies, saying that he has a 5-ton hammer, among other various lies, in order to have control over the situation. And it's in this way he can easily fool naive enemies into considering that Usopp is someone who's immensely strong. After the Skypiea arc, we also saw Usopp started using dials, where he was able to use respiration and breathe underwater, or things that could expel explosive gases. And also, let's not forget his fight with Luffy, where he used an impact dial to absorb and reflect hits back. Unfortunately, since the time skip, we haven't seen a lot of dials since then, which there have been people in the community who've wondered if we will ever see dial technology come back, or if it's just been a phase and now we're on a new, more interesting weapons. So currently, and after the time skip, Usopp had trained with Boyne in the archipelago and had become very adept at using pop greens, where we saw him actually defeat some of the fake Straw Hat pirates that had been there at Sabati using a carnivorous plant that resembled kind of a monstrous Dione with testrals. And since the time skip, the pop greens really haven't disappointed in giving Usopp an amazing diverse ability in combat, and really have been the main means of combat because it's this really random and amazingly useful ability that they give Usopp. One example was during the Fishman Island arc, where Usopp managed to save the crew and the Thousand Sunny only from being crushed by boulders by using his pop greens to grow like these seaweed-like plants to trap the boulders. And then again, when they had an encounter with the new Fishman pirates at Ryukyu Palace, where he used a giant flower with a terrible smell to stop all of the invaders. In a different battle with some of the new Fishman pirates, Usopp was also seen using a particular type of pop green that created bamboo shoots that grew out of the ground, impaling his enemies with pretty great ease. In this same arc, we also saw Usopp use his pop greens in a fight against Daruma, where he shoots a special pop green that explodes in the tunnels made by Daruma's teeth and kind of exploded in the shape of a skull. And during his final conflict against Daruma, he used a pop green that made a plant dragon that was able to defeat Daruma very quickly. And in addition to the attacks that Usopp can use, he also can get help from these pop greens in certain situations. A couple examples of these are pop greens that made a trampoline that could throw his enemies or allies upwards, or when he was in Punk Hazard and had a plant that could have a sleeping effect to make the children that were there in Punk Hazard kind of just take a nap. But whatever the case is, as we head into this final saga of One Piece, we're gonna have to see some development come from Usopp. And I want to reflect back to one of Usopp's greatest abilities that has been the speculation of many in the community. And that is the fact that it seems that even though Usopp lies, every lie that he makes tends to come true in some way. Now, one of the things that was very interestingly said and claimed by Usopp during this most recent Wano arc was the fact that his Conqueror's Haki was making everybody weak. Now, in fact, it was actually Big Mom's Haki that was coming from the rooftop fight, but Usopp still claimed it was his Conqueror's Haki. Now stay with me, because this may sound a little weird, but we've seen times when, back when he was telling his stories to Kaya, he talked about giant fish that were so big that after they ate, they pooped out islands. It became true. So what if, in the very near future, we see that during this, next arc, where possibly we go to Elbaf, and Usopp gets his character arc and his shine, where he finally attains his status as a brave warrior of the sea. Perhaps it's in this moment where Usopp truly unleashes and opens up his true Conqueror's Haki. Because imagine a sniper who now can not only affect Devil Fruit users, but intangible, Logia users, because he is now able to use Conqueror's coating on his projectiles. Imagine what a change, and really to what great comic effect Oda could use that for in these next wonderful arcs that we get to see as our story comes to its final exciting kind of, maybe not conclusion, but getting close to conclusion. But until that time, we're still going to see these kind of novel things come out of Usopp. But once he acquires this next level, he's going to go from being just a simple sniper or marksman to literally maybe an expansion of the monster trio to maybe the monster quartet. But with that, I'd love to know what you think. Do you think Usopp may develop some other kind of haki, or do you think that he might think his way out, as we've seen him do in so many other great situations throughout our story? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Well, friends, as we wrap things up, I want to thank you all so much for watching the video all the way up to the very end. Make sure you comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, if you made it this far, why don't you give us a like or hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.